Everyone, in today's video we are going to talk about diasporas. Now for those who don't know what is a diaspora is a time period when a country's people start to move out of their country. There may be a lot of reasons why they do that. There may be income inequality, gender inequality, growth rate, maybe some religious hatred, racial hatred. There can be just million of things. So in today's video, we're going to talk about some of the diasporas. Now, there are some diasporas that some of you will know, at least me, like the Norwegian diaspora. That happened mostly in the 1930s when Norway was not like a very good country to live in. Like there was a lot of poverty. That's why a lot of Americans, especially areas like North Dakota, especially areas like Minnesota, a lot of people can take their ancestry from the regions who came during the 1930s. And like the Italian diaspora, which is kind of famous. So today we're going to start off with Bulgarian diaspora. Now Bulgaria has seen a population decline. Their population in 1985 at its peak was nearly 12 million, and now I think it's nearly 9 million today as of 2021. Now let's see first Bulgarian diaspora and where does Bulgaria go. So here we have a general map of people identifying as Bulgarian, and of course Bulgaria being in the darkest shade. So since Europe is a small continent, we need to zoom in to see it. And as we can see here, of course, Bulgaria is in the black. The darker the color, the more Bulgarian there are. Of course, there are a lot of Bulgarian knowledge across, but I'm surprised some of the European countries like Croatia, they're like very near to Bulgaria, don't have a lot of Bulgarian, surprisingly. Now we can maybe zoom out some avenue, but keep in mind that all the information was found from Wikipedia, like for all the pictures. And since everyone has access to Wikipedia, some of the information may be wrong. So if you want to do your own research, please do that. As you can see, there are surprisingly some Bulgarian in Libya and Syria. Now, it wouldn't be such a strange thing if those two countries are not facing a civil war, but it's not that it's a very dark color. Of course, the United States is also colored kind of dark. Now let's take about country to country. Okay, let me zoom out a bit. Okay, so as you can see, after Bulgaria, I guess, Turkey has the most Bulgarians outside of Bulgaria, which also kind of makes sense since Bulgaria actually borders a little bit of Turkey. There are 700,000 Bulgarians classified as Bulgarians in Turkey as of 2011. So keep in mind that the data is 10 years old. So some of the there maybe the population may have increased a lot, the population also declined a lot. So you have to also take into consideration when these data were done. Followed by Greece, of course, other volume country, as you can see here, which has 300,000 Bulgarians as of 2011, followed by United States 300,000 equally surprisingly, but there is an ethnic of 35,588 ethnic Bulgarians. These are people with Bulgarian citizens, keep in mind that. Followed by Spain, Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, Canada. Now, a lot of these countries are European since, Bulgaria is a European country. Next one. Canada, North Macedonia, Cyprus, Netherlands, Russia, France, Moldova. The first South African country probably then Libya and two only African countries followed by Austria, Belgium, Australia, Portugal, Serbia, Poland, and Sweden. Now let's talk about Norwegian diaspora. Now Norwegian diaspora was a diaspora which happened, like I said in the starting of the video, during the 1930s when Norway was a poor country. Well, unlike today, 90 years later, with now Norway is one of the richest countries. And since a lot of Norwegians moved actually during that time, so of course there's not a lot of information. We can just this is so that the diaspora thing, but just to spot how many people classified as at least 1% of Norwegian descent. As you can see, Norway, of course, in the black. But they're not surprising. Not a lot of Norwegians around the world. Like they're not so spread out. They're just like in one country of to the majority. Of course, some of them in Europe, like Sweden, Denmark, Finland. Surprisingly, it's not Iceland for some reason. Australia, USA, Canada. Now let's talk about country to country. As you can see, Norway, of course, having the most people as Norwegian descent with 4 million. What? You're saying that there are 4,548,958 Norwegians in Norway, while there are 4,642,526 Norwegians in USA, which means that there are more Norwegians in the USA than they are in Norway, followed by Canada, but with a very drastic change. Like once it was 4 million, now it's just 463,000. Then United Kingdom with the again way more drastic change with only 13,000. And then there are other Norwegian countries like Sweden, which is also Norwegian country, which has 48,000. I think because literally borders it. Then Australia, Denmark, another Norwegian country, Spain, France, Brazil, Germany, Finland, Switzerland, New Zealand, Italy, Iceland, and Japan. So there was a lot of information, unlike the Bulgarian, where the list of Bulgarian people never never ended. There was just a very short list of people Norwegian descent going out of Norway. I think that's because Norway is like maybe has a more bright futures. See, not to offend Bulgaria, of course, but Bulgaria is the most poorest country in the EU. I think that's why a lot of Bulgarians are out of the country. While if Norway would join the EU, it would be one of the richest. Now let's talk about Italian diaspora. Now Italian diaspora was also a diaspora that we talked about during the starting of the video, and that was also during the 1930s and 1940s, especially during the Mussolini time, and of course due to fascist Italy, a lot of Jewish Italians had to also move out of Italy. And of course, during Muslim times, Italy was also like a very rich country. But unlike today, which is now our kind of rich country, not the richest in EU, but still one of the richest. So we could not see a country-to-country map, but we can see that of course Italy has the most Italians. Unlike Norwegian diaspora, Italian diaspora is still happening mostly because of the shortage of jobs, mostly because of shortage of opportunities. Maybe that's maybe the case. Unlike that, Italy is a very beautiful country since I have lived there for some years, and Italy is a very beautiful country, not gonna lie. So here we can see, of course, after the US being a still dark country, and other than like Brazil, Argentina, no surprise. But there are also some countries that I was surprised, like Saudi Arabia, in Zambia. Oh, Zambia color is like very white, but you can still probably see that these are very few minority of Italians. Of course, very little bit in South Africa. Now, Libya is kind of reasonable since they colonized Libya and it's also very near to Libya. But Libya is still going on a civil war, and Saudi Arabia is also kind of strange due to the religion problem. And Zambia is a very strange one since it does not have access to the sea. It's not a country that a lot of people talk about, and Italy never colonized it. So Zambia is kind of a strange one. Now let's talk about Russian diaspora. The Russian diaspora is of course a term people being identified as Russophone, like there's the Anglophone, and of course there would also be a Russophone. Now let's talk about country to country. As we can see, Russia being identified as black, and I think people with the most Russian descent. But there's a lot of countries in red, surprisingly enough. Of course, Eastern Europeans being most because they were during the Soviet Union times, like Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan having a little bit few, Belarus, Estonia, Lithuania, Lithuania. Italy also having a lot of them. But there are also some strange ones. Of course, Yemen being one of those, since Yemen is going through tough times, so that's kind of strange one. Otherwise, we can say that Cuba and Venezuela are strange one, but we should not forget that Russia and Cuba and Russia and Venezuela are good friends. So that can maybe explain the reason why. Of course, there are a lot of Russians in the United States, like there are in Canada, and there's a surprisingly lot of Russians in Mexico. And of course, other countries like China, South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, United Arab Emirates, in Azerbaijan, like in the Caucasus, surprisingly, they have good relations with Armenia. Even though this is the case in the Caucasus, Azerbaijan has the most ethnic Russians. Now, I know that Africa is not a country, but a continent. But we could not just go each of the countries since there are literally 64 of them. So this thought to do just like a little bit of making them all tied up. And so as you can see, of course, Africa being in the black, with of course more a lot of Africans. And there are of course a lot of Western European countries like France, Spain, Italy, UK. I think mostly due to colonial era. And then of course there are a lot in America like Brazil, United States of America, Canada, Mexico. And then there are also a lot in Saudi Arabia and Yemen. But there are not a lot of them. Like I thought they would be, since they're like we talking about 54 countries, I thought they would be like all around the world. But there are not a lot of them all around the world. Mostly because like first we compared literally one country to the entire world and there were a lot of those people. Now we're comparing 54 countries, an entire continent to our world, but still few. Now let's talk about, of course, Africa having the most of them. And after that, Brazil having the most of them. Now, this was a surprising one, since I thought after Africa, the United States would be first. But no, United States is second. After Brazil, Brazil having 108 million Africans, followed by United States with a 46 million Africans, followed by Haiti 9 million. This is a very big drop from 46 to 9 million. Then Colombia, followed by France, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Jamaica, United Kingdom, Mexico, Canada, Spain, Italy, Dominican Republic. Of course, in countries like Spain and and Italy, 79% of them belong from North African countries. In Spain, 79%, while 59% belongs to North African countries in Italy. And of course, when we're talking about United States and Colombia, we are also talking about multi-racial people. So as you can see, there are a lot of countries, and there are also Russian, but there's like 50, 100 of them. Now let's talk about China. Now China is the most populous country in the world, and when you're the most populous country, there are chances that there's going to be also a lot of people outside of your country being classified as your identity. Now, of course, China is going to remain for always the most populous country, but from the 1950s until of June 2021, China is the most populous country. Amsterdam was also more populous from the before the 1950s, but all the data I see is, but we don't have any data before the 1950s. So now let's talk about country to country. Now, as we can see, of course, United States, Canada having a lot of Chinese, but also bordering countries like Russia, Kazakhstan, India, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, South Korea, Japan, but there's surprisingly not a lot of Chinese in Mongolia, North Korea, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Pakistan, and Afghanistan. Nepal, and Bhutan. Now, these are mostly because, well, these countries border China, but still they don't have a lot of Chinese. Now, Mongolia was a surprising one, since Mongolia not only borders a lot of China, it was also part of China, but there's still a lot of Chinese in Mongolia. Now, let's talk about countries to countries. Of course, after China, Thailand having the most Chinese. Now, this was not really a surprising one since I really didn't know that which contains the majority Chinese after China. Thailand, after Thailand is Malaysia, which is a foreign country. After Malaysia, it's Indonesia, which is a Malay, like Thailand, like Malaysia borders Thailand, and Indonesia borders Malaysia. So that's kind of strange one. United States being fourth at this list, followed by Singapore. Now this includes its ancestry, followed by Canada. Now Canada was not a surprising one since I hear that there are a lot of Chinese people, especially in Vancouver. Followed by Myanmar, Philippines, Australia, South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, France, United Kingdom, Venezuela, Peru, South Africa, Russia, Italy, Kazakhstan, Brazil, New Zealand, Spain, Germany, Australia, Argentina, and Laos, and these are, and of course, a lot more. Now let's talk about the last country in our today's video list of diasporas, and let's talk about Japanese diaspora. Now, as we can see, there are a lot of countries with Japanese diaspora. Of course, a lot of them being in the Western world, especially in the Western continent and Western Europe and its neighboring countries. Of course, Japan. This is Japan in black. And of course, states neighboring are like China, South Korea, Philippines, and Russia being a lot of them. And of course, other countries like United States, Canada, Mexico, and so on a lot. Now let's talk about country to country. Okay, so there are over 3,800,000 total population. And Brazil seems to have a lot of those. In fact, Brazil has the most Japanese people with 2 million people. Yes, it's 32 million people. Japanese Brazilians are Brazilian citizens who are national or natural of Japanese ancestry or Japanese immigrants living in Brazil. Now, this was not a surprising one, especially since I have heard that there is surprisingly a lot of Japanese in Brazil for some reason, even though they are literally in the different hemispheres. But literally, like Brazil is in the southern hemisphere, even though some of its area are northern hemisphere, but the majority being the southern hemisphere, and they are also in the western hemisphere, so they are literally two different hemispheres. And of course, after Brazil, United States. After United States is mainland China. After there is Philippines, Canada, Peru, Australia. Peru was also surprising one since I didn't knew that there are a lot of Japanese in Peru, followed by Australia, Thailand, United Kingdom, Argentina, Germany, France, Singapore, South Korea, and of course here are a lot of them like Mexico, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and a lot more. If you have enjoyed this video, please click the like button, and if you have not already subscribed, then click the subscribe button and turn those notifications on, and it's always free. I will see you in the next video. Until